Hello, hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're going to give folks time to get logged in and situated here. My name is Matt Pittman, and I will be your host this afternoon. Take some time to find that chat feature, find that Q&A button. The chat is open. You can chat with those of us on the panel. You can also chat with each other. We'll get more into that detail as we go. Sunny in Wilmington, North Carolina. I see that, Amy. It's sunny down here where I am in South Florida as well, relative to you. This is a good time to chat, drop in where you're calling from, joining us from. Hopefully those of you on the East Coast like me, maybe you have your lunch with you and you're making good use of the time. Singapore, wow. Thank you so much for joining us. France.
So pretty early there.
So you're having your evening cocktail then, maybe not lunch. You're world famous, Hemant. They're joining us from all over the globe.
I'm just with the best.
Excellent.
Serbia. Wow.
Serbia. Wow. Thank you so much for joining us. Hey, I got a neighbor on the call from South Florida.
Manila.
I'm checking out. We've got Manila, we've got Swaziland, South Africa, Southern Africa,
Portugal,
Colombia. Very good. Hello, New York City. Hello, Northern California. Give it a few more seconds here and we'll kind of kick things off officially. Okay, well, I think we are at a good place to kick things off. So good afternoon and welcome to How to Create a Culture That Motivates Learning with Brandon Hall Group and Absorb LMS. My name is Matt Pittman. I'm a principal analyst with Brandon Hall Group, and I will be your webinar host this afternoon. And I am joined by my partner in crime and director, VP of marketing with Absorb LMS, Hemant Makhija. He's been teaching me to say his name, and so I wanted to make sure I said it correctly. So Hemant, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. And hi from Austin, everybody, since everybody's sharing their locations.
Very good, very good. So we are very thankful for our webinar sponsor, Absorb Software. Absorb Software is an AI-powered learning management provider for all learners inside and outside the enterprise across multiple industries and geographies. It's purpose-built for an engaging learner experience and efficient administration. They provide personalized experience for millions of employees, customers, partners, and members to discover, absorb, and apply the knowledge that they need. We really encourage you to check out their website at absorblms.com for more information. And we're going to talk a little bit more about how technology impacts this conversation around culture that motivates learning as we get into our time today. If you're not familiar or you're new to our webinar experience with Brandon Hall Group, Brandon Hall Group is a research and analyst firm, and we are focused on empowering and enabling excellence in all areas of the human resource practice spectrum. There are many different ways that we do that. These webinars are just part of that. Our annual awards program for HCM technology and also for education technology, which is a new program that we've opened this year, They are open right now for submissions, and you can learn more about that at excellenceawards.com. I think that's the right URL. I just realized I may not have said that right. We'll get the right one in the chat for you. Okay. At the core of what we do at Brandon Hall Group is our research, and we always have a few surveys open. Right now, our learning measurement survey, which we call How Learning Drives Business Impact, Think Like a CEO, is open. Those links will be in the deck. The deck will be provided for you at the end of the session today, and you have those links there. But if you go to our website at brandonhall.com, there is a button that says Open Surveys in the upper right-hand corner of that screen, and you can find our open research. Please do participate. And we do want today to be as engaging and as interactive as we can possibly make it in a webinar format. So you've already found your chat window. That is excellent. Thank you for that. Please keep that going. Comments, questions. If you have a specific question for myself or Hemant as we go through the slides today, please use the Q&A panel for that. That way we will see those questions and hopefully be able to address as many of them as possible in our time together. Throughout our time together, we also will be making use of a polling feature. So you'll see those polls pop up on your screen. Please do participate in that. We do want to have your voice added to those polls as we go through. And we will ask some other questions as well. You do have on your screen a raise hand button. So at some point, I may ask you to just respond to something that we're talking about by raising your hand. So do me a favor and just show me that you can find that by clicking that raise hand button. And I see those numbers going up. This is a smart crew. We're going to have a good day. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you for that. This is for you. And with that, I think we are ready to go. Heyman, anything before we get started that you want to share with the group or encourage them to do?
No, thank you. I look forward to the conversation today, Matt. Thank you all for joining from different parts of the world. And we are here to share our knowledge, our experience on this topic. I'd love to have a good conversation around it.
Excellent. So let's jump right in. So as we begin to think about learner motivation and learner engagement, and Hemant and I have had a lot of conversation over the last few months about this topic. One of the things we want to draw out for you is just what is the current landscape of learning? Most of us on this call are likely learning professionals in some capacity, and I want to share some of the most recent data from our annual Learning and Development Benchmarking Survey, which we completed earlier this year. So a couple of things. Most learning organizations are still focused primarily on their internal audience, employees and internal folks that work with the organization. About a third of organizations, though, are working with internal and external audiences, and that number has grown from the prior year's survey. So we're seeing more and more emphasis on being able to provide learning and access to learning outside of our employee base as well. That could be anything from partners to contractors to customers to dealers or franchisees in certain businesses. And then a very small percentage of the respondents to our survey are focused only on an external audience. If you're on the call today, I'd be curious to know what your primary focus is. Are you primarily focusing on internal team members only, or maybe a mix of internal and external? Would love for you to drop that in the chat as we go through this next little bit of data.
Now, look forward to that information, Matt. But there's an interesting data point. At Absorb, we see that as a kind of a healthy mix of all three audiences. About 40% internal only, 40% internal and external, so blended, and then about 20% focused primarily on external side. So that kind of makes it 100.
Very good. When it comes to the structure of the learning function, and it does look like in the chat that similar to our data results, that internal continues to be the primary focus. In terms of learning function, the actual department responsible for learning, you can see that the mix is pretty even between what we describe as a hybrid model and a decentralized model. The difference between the two being decentralized, your learning professionals, your learning team sits embedded in the business, and the hybrid model is a mix of that, where you have some parts of the learning organization sitting within the business or the operations, and some sitting within the corporate learning structure. Centralized is that traditional learning function that all learning is managed and administered and created at that central corporate level. And then about 10% are moving towards a learning business partner model, which is exactly what it sounds like, which is someone who is kind of focused on translating learning needs between the business and the corporate learning team and ensuring that that support happens.
Yeah, generally, Matt, on just kind of chime in on this one. It's like with the increasing number of people working in remote or a distributed workforce environment, we might see more of hybrid and decentralized kind of taking more role in this process. And that's something that also goes well with people who are focused on the external enablement side, like it's motivation for external learners. There too, these two models work actually sometimes better than the centralized, but there is nothing against having a centralized option as well, because that's really kind of goes well with our what we see in the market as well.
Yes, and I think that this data is from 2023, and it does reflect a shift from prior years' data where the centralized and decentralized were a little bit heavier and the hybrid was less prevalent. So I did see a question pop up in the chat about what is the hybrid function again. So a hybrid function essentially means that there are learning teams that are embedded within the business. So for example, you might have a training staff that sits in the call center that supports the call center business. But at the same time, there is also a corporate training function or learning function that is driving the strategy, maybe maintaining the technology stack, and all of the policies and procedures around how learning gets done for the organization as a whole. But there is a team that's specifically dedicated to one part of the business, and they report to the business, not to the learning function, typically. One of the other questions that we asked on our benchmarking survey is, what do you expect to happen in the learning and development with your learning and development budget over the course of this year? And for a phenomenal majority of our survey respondents felt that learning and development budgets were going to increase over the course of this year. Heyman, is that what you're hearing from your customers as well?
Absolutely. So the way I'm looking at this data, and I'm saying, okay, only 12% see a decrease, and there too, I'll kind of take two takeaways from this slide or this data. One is that more and more organizations are treating L&D as strategic investment, something that they really are serious about it. And they're getting more content, they're modernizing their L&D platforms, and they're like developing personalized learning programs. So that's one takeaway. That's the increase kind of shows there. But on the have an interpretation on the decrease side as well, which is they're looking to further optimize the L&D investments they have already made so that they get more out of from their LMS. So whether it is consolidating their platforms across different departments or use cases, or adding more AI and analytics to drive efficiencies, and even have more value-driven learning programs. So kind of goes well with even though you're reducing the budget, but your output is better than what it was.
Yes, and so if you are out there and you're like some of our participants in the chat and you're a little surprised by that result, hit that raise hand button so we can just see how people are feeling about that. We at Brandon Hall Group actually felt that was a little bit of a surprising response as well. All right, let's get through the rest of this data. So some of the technologies and platforms that organizations are currently using, you can see it's pretty diverse. courseware, authoring, LMS, social learning and collaboration platforms on the upper end of that list. And then some of the more specialized technologies and emerging technologies like AR and VR platforms and learning analytics, though I would argue that's not really emerging, but and increasingly more critical. But we see the technology continuing to diversify when it comes to learning. It used to be you had an LMS and that was about it.
Yeah, that's true.
And then,
like, if you look at what Kim is saying, that she's being asked to do more with a little increase in the budget, and that kind of highlights your point, saying that while there is a need for all these different functions of LMS, but your investments are not increasing, so you need that right kind of platform to help you also.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see that organizations are looking at the social learning collaboration platforms as something they want to add within the next 12 months, which is critical to our topic today of culture of learning. All of this is really focusing in on what is the reality in which we are trying to drive a culture that motivates learning. Some of those challenges being able to upskill employees at the speed of business and providing personalized learning. Now, one of the things we did in preparation, I'm going to cut through a couple of these slides, Hemant, and I want to jump to our pre-poll. So we did send out a poll to several of you that registered early on to ask your take on a couple of items relative to the topic we're talking about. So one of them was, what motivates you to learn at work? So here's the top 5 answers from that pre-poll. So thank you if you received and responded to that pre-survey. We appreciate that. What we see here is, in terms of what's driving us as individuals to learn at work, is career growth or something that I'm personally interested in, and being able to learn with a group. And then coming right up behind that is the recommendation from a peer or a recommendation from my boss. And that is also reflected in the other question we asked, which was, what drives learner motivation at your organization? And again, what comes back is that career growth and potential promotion, following through on career paths. Compliance drives learner motivation, knowing that I need to get through what the organization is asking me to get through. The social collaboration component, incentives. So some organizations are incentivizing. I know you're going to touch on that, Hemant, as we get into farther into the conversation here, and gamification. Is there anything else to our audience right now that, when you think about what drives learner motivation or what motivates you, that you would add to that list? I saw Peter brought up, what about performing in my role? Absolutely. Interestingly, that didn't really come out of the data, but I'm not sure we kept that as an option. I would think we were more interested in other avenues. What else, if any, would you guys add to that? Or Hemant, what thoughts have you had about what drives learner motivation beyond what we're about to get into?
Sure. So first of all, I like the way that people have responded to this question. Like, it's I'm going to introduce to a framework to all of us today for motivating learning. And from where I stand, these responses are very much can be summarized into those 4 areas of investment that you will see today. So I think this is in line, including even performance point. That was, even though the pre-poll didn't say, but that doesn't mean that it is not important. It's as important as well. Skill development is someone that people, Tracy mentioned just now. So those are.
So, and to answer that question about, I apologize, Hemant, but to answer the question about skill development, we did not specifically ask about skill development because we were very focused on just the concept of motivation. And so to me, skill development shows up in the growth category and in the career path response. So building my skill set in order to grow in my career is where I would make that closest connection.
Yeah, there is one point I would like to make is that learner motivation also is the end, and some of the means are mentioned here, like, skill development is a mean to getting to that motivation as well.
All right, so let's get our first poll up and running. So Melissa's going to launch a poll right now, and the question is, how do you know that your employees are engaged and motivated to learn more in your organization? And there's a couple of options there. More shares and comments and likes on courses, increased number of courses taken, leaderboard movement if you've got some gamification built in, number of employees promoted from within versus external hires, increased average tenure of employees. Which of these things reflect how you believe employees are engaged and motivated to learn more in your organization?
Look forward to the response.
Yep. And Melissa, when you feel like we've got a good number there, just go ahead and post those results.
Okay, we'll give folks just another couple of seconds here.
All right. So it looks like about 82% increased number of courses taken and certifications attained. And right behind that, more shares, comments, and likes on courses. And right behind that, number of employees promoted from within versus external hires.
Yeah.
Does that surprise you at all, Hemant?
No, the question responses to the question that we had were quite expansive. Like some were more in the day of learning, and then some which were more at the program and company level. And glad to see that both sides people have kind of realized like they are important. Definitely happy to see the increased number of courses taken, which is a very obvious kind of measure that people are motivated. They want to learn more. They want to do more. This is in line with what I was expecting.
Very good. And so let's jump into it and let's talk about learner motivation and creating that culture of motivation. If you haven't picked up on it yet, what we're really saying is it's all about the learner. And it has to be interesting to them, add value to them, has to meet a need or a desire that they have. And peer influence can be key, particularly with the newer generations in the workforce. And when I use the term newer, I'm using that very, very liberally because most of the generations in the workforce are newer than me. So we try to model that behavior for this webinar by sending out that pre-poll to make sure we are capturing what folks are hoping to learn out of our time. So let's talk about how a motivated individual behaves, Hemant.
Sure. So we asked our customers saying, what difference do they see in people's behavior when they are motivated or not? And this was part of that list. So no surprises here. Motivation definitely correlates with performance, with productivity, even product innovation or service innovation, or generally innovation, and of course satisfaction. There are they are goal oriented. They are generally positive in their approach and willing to take initiatives. So everything they do is with passion. So it's the behavior that you see. As I said, this is the end result, and how do we get there is going to be the key. And the role that LMS can play in it will be something that I would like to even discuss further. But would love to hear if there is something that the audience see that is missing in this list. Please put it in the chat. But we can go to the next one to see the end result of the motivation, which is like end of the day, the softer side is what you observe, what you see on a day-to-day basis. But this is where the rubber meets the road. Like your learner needs to, could be inside your organization, employees, or outside, as you discussed earlier. And how satisfied they are, like how is their satisfaction score trending? Are you kind of keeping an eye on the first year attrition of employees? Like, how about their absenteeism or quality of work? Is there a measure connected to it? Maybe there is an overall business performance improvement that you can see and report on it. Any positive correlation with motivation programs in the company and or learner enablement? So how do you measure that? So we thought we would put some of these measures here, but I think, Matt, you have a kind of a question popping up soon, which is, oh, someone asked about the meaning of the acronyms: employee satisfaction, customer satisfaction, partner satisfaction, and member satisfaction is what those ESAT, CSAT, etc. mean. So, Matt, is there anything missing in this list, according to you?
Yeah, I think if the audience has things they would add to this measurement list, they can do that in the chat as we go. But I think I'd like to jump now to where that motivation comes from and have you talk to us a little bit about that. So I'm gonna jump over a couple of things here, and let's just jump right to where does that motivation come from?
Sure. So, Matt, this is the motivation framework I mentioned earlier. Very early in my career, I realized that long-term motivation doesn't come from salary increase. So it has to come from other aspects or goals. So I will start with the middle circle here, which is the inherent motivation, which is who we are. This is what drives us. Like, this is what makes us get up in the morning and do what we do when we love that. And when this inherent motivation gets combined with our skills that we have acquired over the years and the job that we do, it becomes an ikigai for us. So that's a Japanese term for loving what you do and getting paid for what you do, and you're good at it. Then beyond that, like, I see motivation happening at two levels: personal and corporate. Personal is something when something is easier to do, it is motivating. And things that we know well, they are easy to do. Use of technology makes things easy to do. So that is always a play here we can always think of. The colleagues, as someone mentioned earlier, like, peer recommendation is important. Our colleagues and role models motivate us. People we admire, people we observe them, and we get motivated by how they are handling things, how they are doing things. And that healthy competition among colleagues, that is another reason why we keep improving our knowledge, our skill, our performance. And after all, we are all social animals, so we all need that drive. On the corporate front, we have organizations who can be more purposeful about motivating its employees. That's some of the big topic of today's conversation. Just having programs is not enough. Like, it needs to be communicated that it is important, that it is happening. It needs executive sponsorship. It becomes part of the culture when incentives are attached to it. It gets discussed in the business review. It becomes part of your bonus structure. And last but not the least, what motivates us is when we learn and do things which are in line with what the organization is looking for. So our efforts, when we start seeing their value in the organization, then it becomes like motivating, saying, wow, we are contributing to the success of the organization. But that was my framework, but would love to hear what the audience thinks here. And Matt, if you have any comments on it.
So I think, some of the comments that I'm seeing in the chat are around that starting at the top of something that's easy to do, and what we're really, I think what I heard you say, and I guess maybe let's clarify this a little bit. Are we talking about easy in terms of my ability to engage with that learning and that experience, or are we talking about just the cognitive lift or the amount of effort I have to put into completing whatever that task is? Or are we talking about a mix of both?
I think it's a mix of both. Like if you know something, then it becomes easy. And it could be an acquired skill. Like yesterday, it was not as easy, but today, because you learned something new, it's easier. So it's just helps me go to the next task. Like what else can I learn now? So
Very
that's
good.
how I see it.
And then when we talk about putting that within the context of workplace learning and then technology that supports that learning, how does the technology help us
Yes.
in this area?
And I'm going to speak from LMS perspective because that's what I know better in my career here. But really, LMS is not going to enforce motivation, but it will be in the one which can enable motivation. Let's first focus on the right side, which is the personal side. So having multi-channel access to trainings and learning just makes it easy for learners to access it whenever they want it, wherever they want it, whether they are on a laptop, mobile device, or a kind of a headless LMS in their favorite business application. In the flow, someone talked about productivity and performance. If I have micro-learning training available within the environment I'm already in, I don't have to switch applications. I was just looking at one of the stats the other day, Matt. We like on a typical Fortune 500 company employee spends about 4 hours every week just switching between applications. And that's like an overall in a year, it's about 9% of productivity time. So if I can at least reduce some of that switching where your learning is available within the application that you are in, it just makes it easier. Personalized learning paths for holding hands of learners through their journeys, like always guiding, reminding, recommending. So there was someone mentioning about the supervisor recommending or asking for that particular course. Observational checklists and mentored training are other ways LMS can make it more personal and real. AI-powered searches on the bring in the context and the continuity behind your keyword searches, makes it part of your story, like builds kind of a digital path for you. It doesn't matter which channel you use for that. Then inculcating healthy competition by making learning fun, as you said earlier also in the pre-poll, also gamifications, leaderboards, letting you share your viewpoints. That was another point mentioned in the pre-poll, saying, can I share my wins and accolades, the certificate that I just got, can I put it on my social network? Makes it a powerful way of motivating. So that was pretty much all that I can add here on the personal side. But there is a play for LMS on the corporate side as well, which is, is the company investing in a modern LMS system? So that's a first step, as we saw in the investments are increasing generally. So it's a strategic investment the company is making. Developing relevant content, whether I'm creating content or curating it for my particular business, it just helps people grow professionally as well as personally when they'll be able to upskill, cross-skill, and reskill. Having analytics in place so that the trends, the gaps, the progress, and that also motivates the investment. And then, of course, extending the same platform beyond employees to customers, partners, members. It's kind of an again doing more with the current investments. And the last thing I think I have to say here is it's absolutely motivating for learners when they have their first few days in a company, well planned and structured. They amalgamate into the culture of the company quickly. They know who to contact, how to work, get up to speed quickly, and that is all can be enabled through LMS in an integrated format. So lot of things to say on this slide, sorry, but I will take a pause here.
I think that's important to understand. It's an important connection to the culture, is all of the ways that we enable employees to engage with and access their learning. It isn't just the formal learning either. There is the ability to tap into those more informal pieces that we've talked about as well. Now, there was a question up here about the personal side of this particular image and how this is reflected in Absorb today versus being sort of on a roadmap for future. So I'll let you speak to that a little bit, and then let's jump to the success story that we have on the next slide.
Sure. So all of these things that I mentioned here are currently part of the functionality that Absorb can offer. In fact, the success story, let's go through that. Maybe some of the highlights can be mentioned here. So this is a car wash company, one of the largest car wash companies in the US, in fact, the largest. Their brand stands for quality, speed, and commitment, and they have 400 plus locations. And as you can imagine, car wash company, there's a lot of turnover at the front end of the organization where people come and go. It's a quick replacement, but at the end of the day, it's a learning curve for people to come, learn how to operate, how to serve customers. And that is the challenge that they were facing, that the new hire onboarding experience was suboptimal. There were some courses structure available, but there was no LMS in place. And they also wanted the office folks on those locations to be able to learn more than just the operation part, the financial part, but also the leadership and the soft skills and how to handle with escalations, etc. They chose Absorb, created a lot of 5 to 10 minute micro learning courses for different audiences that we talked about. They ensured that during lunchtime, during breaks, they are kind of motivated to go take some course and progress in that path. They ended up creating about 200 plus courses, which were very proprietary and which were very relevant and tangible for their own success. But in addition, now they are going after like third-party libraries like Skillsoft to open it up for managers, supervisors, for the additional training that I talked about. There was one aspect to this situation, which was because these locations are in remote areas, sometimes their internet connection was not great. So having that offline course taking capability was also critical for them. So take it, and then supervisor learning was another one, which was, I am the senior person in the car wash, you are the new person, let me show you, I'm going to observe you. Observational checklist was there, and everything I talked about was enabled through LMS. And as a result, of course, 7,000+ people have been trained on it across those locations, and 20% decrease in turnover rate. That's something which was very critical for the business.
Excellent. And I think when we look at a challenge like this story reflects, it helps to be really clear on what the issue is that we're trying to solve in making learning available to folks, right? And that can be motivating the motivating the success as well. Now, got a couple of more things we want to talk about in terms of igniting motivation. Then I really do want to turn our attention to some questions that we've got coming in around the day-to-day managing of expectations and building out this culture of motivation. So let me take us here and talk to us a little bit about leaderboards and then social profiles.
I think these are some of the screenshots I added just to kind of highlight that people love seeing themselves on the leaderboard. It's part of the gamification process, make them do more with what they have, and they love to see the movement on the leaderboards, and this is something that's inherent in the application. Next screen also has badges and certifications, and so they can share these badges among their colleagues, and something that they can feel good about, proud about. One other customer, it's a mortgage customer. Yeah, they talk about, you know, how the learner is in the middle of everything, and that was something which was critical for this company. You know, they wanted to make sure that the product is making the learners feel it learning fun and welcoming. So that's something that this is a consistent kind of feedback we get from our customers, but I wanted to highlight one of that such response.
And keeping the learner at the center of it is really the heart of the motivation conversation, isn't it, Hemant?
Absolutely. And, you know, we are all adults here. We want to be in control of our learning. While the companies can give us all the environments and the programs and the incentives, at the end of the day, we want to choose how we want to learn, how we want to consume information. And if I can enable all of that through these technologies, you know, it just makes it easy for me as an employee, and also even customers and partners. They just love that kind of concept.
And sometimes when you know, we as learning professionals and learning leaders, you know, we are highly motivated, and we want and think that everyone should want to engage in the work that we do. But let's talk a little bit. We had a question come in on the question board that I thought was an interesting one to tackle, which is, how do you motivate or convince managers that engaging in learning is worth it when it is taking colleagues away from work that needs to get done?
Yeah.
So I have some thoughts about this, but I'd love to hear, Hemant, your take on it.
So yeah, I can start with some. One of the things is that creating micro learning courses, like don't make them sit through hour-long training courses, break it up 10-minute, 5-minute, something which is relevant for that moment, what I need now to clarify, instead of go back, learn something fresh. So that makes it easy. Two is, as long as these courses are getting they're in line with what the business is looking for. If there's a skill that the company is going to go and need more resources on, and it's in line with what I want to do as an employee, then it's kind of, I'm preparing workforce for the future. So as a manager, it just makes it easier for me to make that investment. 5%, 10% of your time, 15% of your time, you know, not 15 is too much, but just kind of giving numbers.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's exactly right. I think it's the more a manager understands the value and experiences the value of that training through the performance of their people, the less work you're having to do to convince them to let people engage with the learning. You know, we are really well past the days where learning agendas are set by the learning team. It has to be tied to what the needs of the business are. It has to be tied to what our performance situation is, and where we need to shore that up, and where we need to see the needle move on individual and collective performance in order to prove that value. If you're drawing that connection clearly and drawing that connection well, then you're going to sell the value to the manager automatically, and that becomes motivating, because then if I know that I complete a micro lesson or two, or I take 10 minutes to go through a module, that on the other side of it, I'm going to pull something from that I can use to make myself better or figure out how to do something. That's incredibly motivating to learners in my experience as well.
Absolutely. Like, if something takes 4 hours to do as a data pull, and that employee is spending that 4 hours every week or every month, and if next time they go and learn some Excel trick, anything that makes that work for 4 hours to 10 seconds, it's good for the company, it's good for the manager. But I also agree with what Michelle was mentioning here, which is like it becomes part of the incentive program, becomes part of the performance. So using analytics of LMS and analytics of other operational systems that you would have, if you can combine and say, okay, this person learned and acquired all these skills, and now the performance has improved, there is kind of a correlation can be established. That's an easier sell for management also.
Yeah. There's a follow-up question about kind of elevating this conversation, not just to managers, which is, who are managing and meeting where the rubber meets the road, but then at the executive level, how do we engage them in the process, get them to actually complete some of the learning and not just be vocal champions, but be actual champions by completing that learning. I think the value conversation is a huge part of that for me on the executive side. And the reality is some executives will jump right in and do that, and others won't. And I've not found a silver bullet that makes that happen. But I do think that if the more that you can tighten up that value chain, and then I also think if you're in an organization that the culture is kind of motivated a little bit by that interpersonal competition piece, and you have the ability to gamify and show some leaderboards, you get a VP up on your leaderboard, and that helps.
It does. Like I can tell you from my experience, I'm a VP in the company, but my CMO and my team, which is focus on product marketing, all of us want to be certified on our product. And this is something that shows up in the leaderboard saying, okay, guys, everybody in the chain is working towards it. And that makes a huge difference. Like,
yep.
Plus also,
and then Joseph asks, how would a company ensure that learners remain determined and motivated throughout a learning program? So one of the ways that I think, if you've got a program that kind of goes over time, right, and there's multiple components to it that have to be completed in a particular time frame or a particular order, I think that the feedback aspect of that experience between the instructor or the subject matter expert and the manager and the employee or the learner can be really important. There is, over time, how am I applying what I'm learning on the job? What did I experience when I tried to do what I learned in the learning, and did it work, or did I have other struggles with it? Having that collaborative opportunity, whether it's a cohort-based program, that's happening in a group setting or not, having the ability to interact with a group of learners or peers that are also going through that same experience, I think makes a big difference.
I'll tell you, like, our customers, some of them are like so innovative. One of them has created or developed a program which is a black belt program for learning. And to just like in normal taekwondo or jiu-jitsu to karate kind of situation, kung fu situation, you have start with white and get to the black belt. They have actually created learning paths from white belt to yellow to green to purple and blue, etc., and green, sorry, in between. And it has set up a like almost an 18 months learning path if someone wants to take it up. It could be as extensive and official as that to answer some of those questions. So people do go and take it very seriously when it comes to creating a path of learning.
Yeah. I think also I want to bring us back to this slide that we looked at earlier, coming back to it's all about the learner. So when we talk about learner motivation and how do we keep them engaged and how do we create an environment where they really want to learn beyond just doing what they have to do, it really does come back to these 4 ingredients. And I was mentioning to someone, and I can't remember if it was when sometime that you and I were speaking this week, Hemant, or if I was in another conversation where I said, we also have to factor in the fact that we are creating content for the TikTok generation. And so we are used to increasingly shorter formats, increasingly targeted experiences and interactions, and peer influence and peer connection in that is key. So the more that we can focus in on it's adding value to me, that it meets a need or a desire I have, and it connects me to my peers in some meaningful way, the stronger the motivation and connection will be or can be to that content.
And the more personalized that list is, the more motivated I become.
Yes. And I think it's important to draw out that this is not an all or nothing construct here. As long as you're checking 1 or 2 of these boxes, everything will not hit all 4. When it hits all 4, that's amazing. But as long as you're touching on a couple of these things, then you should be enabling more and more of that motivation.
Absolutely.
We had a question come up about how do we assess learner motivation in a scalable way? We want to customize learning, give our people autonomy, but how do we make it so that we can reach people individually at scale? Is that unrealistic? That is a great question. And Hemant, what are your thoughts on that?
It is definitely a complex question in terms of, problem riddle to solve for. I would think that take steps towards it. Like, as you said earlier, don't try to solve for everything from 0 to 100. Just take and create a ladder for your own growth as a company of how to motivate. Have the right technology, have the right content, have the right programs in place, and then measurement associated with that. Then do more with that, like modify the programs, add more content, add more skills to it. End of the day, people, as we were talking about adult learning, self-service, self-choice is something that is very important for learners. You tell me, I may or may not do that, but you motivate me, and I'll find the right course and the right performance metric for myself.
Yeah, we talked a lot in our preparation about how part of the challenge with this is how do we build it and administer it in a way that it meets the needs of the business, and we can show the impact, and we can show all the data, all the measurement, all the analytics components, and still have that light touch administration that just, that we're clear about, here's the expectations, here's some things out here that you need to do or must do, and from the corporate perspective, and then inherent in your process and your program is, here are other things that support what you're learning here, and you may want to look at this, or hey, you may want to look at that. And that's where that AI capability that you spoke about, and that the ability of the system to help you as a learner be aware of other things that are available and other things that are out there supporting your needs and your goals, that really makes a difference.
Yeah, like if there is a way to even learn how to play guitar in one of those courses, I will take it up, saying, that's a motivating thing. That company is taking care of my personal growth as well. But I think I just want to add one more point, which is, I think it was a topic that was discussed earlier, about the top management and how they can be convinced more. There is a
Mhm.
role that beyond L&D leader, there's a role that an HR leader also has to play here, which is to get data from employee satisfaction surveys and the stats that we mentioned, like how much internal growth and promotions are happening, how long the tenure is for average employee, and how difficult it is to find the right skill candidate to hire and recruit from the outside. That those are like motivating factors for management also, saying, wow, yeah, like I would rather invest in my employees and keep them for longer than try to find something from outside.
Yep. There's been some interesting comments coming in the chat around getting rid of the bloat and being really targeted in your information and targeted in what the content talks about, and that people are feeling overwhelmed and on information overload. And we do live in a constant state of information overload. And I think for us as learning professionals and learning leaders, part of that has to be a change in our own mindset that says, I am aware of what the organization and the individuals within my organization need to be able to learn and grow into to be successful, or where we need to support them in their ability to perform the work. And I am going to create as many opportunities and avenues to support that effort as I possibly can. But I can no longer approach my job as a learning leader as if I know the only way that this can ever take place or that we can ever move this needle. And so that's where the ability to allow a learner to engage with the content in multiple ways and multiple channels and multiple modalities makes a difference. And I'm going to go ahead and bring up this other slide, Hemant, but if there's if you want to additional comment on that, but I think the reality is that we do live in a world of information overload, and we do contribute to that as learning leaders. And the way around that is to make sure everything that we're releasing is relevant and impactful, and that when things don't hit the mark, that we change course, we change tack on it as quickly as feasible.
You said it, actually. Technology plays a big role in that aspect, because there is information overload because of technology. Additional technology brings in to streamline that and filter that information for you, using AI recommendations, using preset programs, having the feedback mechanism analytics to realize that, is this a popular course? People are taking it. Are we benefiting from it? That really helps. Maybe just quick introduction to our platform, folks. Everything we do, we design, we deliver as far as the Absorb LMS platform is concerned, is all about the learners, keeping them in their needs in mind, employees, customers, partners, members, and beyond. And based on our interactions with our customers and experience that we have gained in the industry, what we see is that these are like top 5 areas that organizations typically want to solve for: compliance and audits, learner motivation, which is the topic of the webinar today, upskilling, reskilling, cross-skilling, productivity of learner, like how well can I make sure that the employees, customers, partners, everybody is able to perform better than before after attending a particular course, after acquiring additional skills and knowledge. And of course, course monetization. All of that can be achieved through a combination of capabilities that the platform offers, be it in-depth analytics or community learning, social learning, intelligent content programming. You talked about, can I create courses which are more relevant? Yes. Can I curate more courses which are relevant? Of course. all of it through that ecosystem integration to make sure your investments in the back end, front end applications are maintained. It's whether it's CRM or it's CM, no, doesn't matter, but it has to talk to your business applications. And then, of course, having a portal to monetize all of it. All this information can be made available through multiple channels of delivery of and consumption of content through a one unified AI-powered platform, which is Absorb LMS. So really appreciate the time that you gave us today and your attention. Very insightful communication on side chat. Really, it was helpful. Thank you for this. Thank you for having me, Matt, on this webinar.
It's our pleasure, and thank you for joining us. Some key takeaways, which will be in the deck that you'll receive after the fact, that align with the information that we talked about. Thank you to our audience and your participation and activity. It always makes for a richer experience, and we appreciate you sticking with us through the end. Within the next couple of hours, you will get an email with a recording of the session, as well as a PDF copy of the presentation. And as always, you can reach out to us here at Brandon Hall Group if we can answer any other questions for you, and definitely visit our friends at Absorb LMS. Have a great afternoon, everyone. Thank you.